Welcome back to Matchbook's Weekend Football Podcast, our second show of the season. Adrian Clark, Mark O'Hare, Miguel Delaney, all back, gentlemen. A pretty interesting opening weekend. In terms of betting, wasn't a great one. And Adrian, I'll start with you here first. I'm not placing any blame in you, but this whole Fulham Liverpool game, it was a bit of a shocker for us in terms of a bet, and it took down not only your best bet but Mark's as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it was totally unexpected. I worked on the game, and Fulham were brilliant, absolutely outstanding from start to finish. What I loved about Fulham was the positivity. Really, they really looked to get after Liverpool right from the off. They were pressing unbelievably. It was a brave tactical policy from Marco Silva and the players, but they rattled Liverpool. So yeah, that's the biggest disappointment for me was Liverpool's performance. They weren't at it. They allowed themselves to be flustered by Fulham. Their passing was quite poor, and obviously for the goals they defended badly. So yeah, I think really surprising start at Craven Cottage. Great for Fulham, not so good for Liverpool, and their supporters will be quite worried, I think, by that display. It wasn't good at all.
No, Mark, I think you'd echo much of Adrian's sentiment there in that one.
Yeah, for sure. I was really surprised by the Fulham performance. I didn't see it coming, and I actually thought that the Liverpool were as good as a banker as the weekend you could possibly get, really. So, it wasn't really until that sort of last half an hour they actually started to look quite threatening and put Fulham under pressure. So, full credit to Fulham for that, and a sort of big thumbs down for Liverpool too, who now are already chasing City and already in past match day one.
Let you guys off the hook, though. You were absolutely on the ball with Brighton plus a goal. Why didn't we back them straight up? The Graham Potter masterpiece once again. Miguel Delaney, what was your takeaway from the opening weekend? We just touched on a pre-recording. Manchester City last week when we were recording were 1.8. They're now currently 1.54 at Matchbook. That's a big jump on one weekend's action, right?
Yeah, and it was the game I was at, which was actually, I have to say, one of the least entertaining games of the weekend. I mean, Haaland was great to watch, and the ball from De Bruyne was incredible, but it wasn't really a contest. And I suppose because of that, and because of what Haaland did, it's led to that drop in their price. I would still be, it's something we touched on last week, and I suppose it's relevant to what the lads have been saying about Liverpool as well. I would still be cautious about that just because this isn't a normal season. If it was a normal season, it would be an immediate concern for Liverpool, which sums things up with the City at the moment, that they're already 2 points behind in the chasing. But of course, with that World Cup in the middle, no matter how good City looked on Sunday, especially, that second goal was so ominous because it feels like that's going to be the new partnership for the Premier League. In the same way we've seen Son and Kane, or say 10 years before that, Gerrard and Torres. It's going to be De Bruyne playing through balls to Haaland. But then, while Haaland has the World Cup off, what's De Bruyne going to look like by January when he's had 4 months of football and a probably quite intensive experience with Belgium? And so that's one reason I would urge caution maybe on that price and why. I mean, really, this season is actually it's like almost a classic Argentine season, with the kind of apertura and the clausura, almost two different campaigns, really, with different rhythms to them and different focuses. So,
Sorry, Miguel, I'm kind of grass you, but Adrian Clark, I'll give you this much, mate. In terms of value bets, you tipped Haaland a 4.0 top goal scorer. You want to guess what price he is now? 2.3 top goal scorer. Again, people just got scared as if to say, "Oh my God, this guy is actually really good."
He missed a couple of chances in the Community Shield, and he was written off, wasn't he? But no, I understood why everybody was worried about how he might adapt. It's a big change of style for City, but the reason I fancied him is because he can score all sorts of goals. He got that explosive pace in pretty tight areas, as well as we saw with the penalty that he won, and all around him are some of the world's best through ball makers. I mean, City are just blessed with them, aren't they? So I don't know. I think he'll be fine, Haaland, and I'm sticking to that golden boot shout.
Yeah, look, we're going to cover 4 Premier League games today. Actually, Mark, one quick one before we go on. PSG -1.5, 5-0 win against Clermont. Well played, sir. That was pretty easy in the bag. We're going to cover 4 Premier League games. There's a couple of EFL selections. Spain and Italy are back this week, but we're not actually covering any games. And again, I suppose it's important to remember, keep your powder dry early in the season. You saw what kind of happened to us last week. We've got to build up a bit of a form line here and go from there. Before we get into 4 Premier League games, if you have not got a Matchbook.com account and you do want to get involved, we've got a pretty decent sign-up offer for you to avail of. It's a £30 money back as a free bet, a £30 welcome offer. Use the bonus code INSIGHTS30 when signing up, and full terms and conditions can be found at Matchbook Insights, also known as insights.matchbook.com. And of course, I would say this, but if you're in the odds checker grid, any Saturday when Premier League is on, we're generally best price on most outcomes. So do check that out if you have not got a Matchbook account today. Insights 30 for the £30 free bet. We're starting with the game of the weekend for me anyway, gentlemen, on Sunday in West London, Chelsea against Tottenham. Let's take a look at the betting. I'll start with Miguel on this, but let's take a look at the betting as we have it at Matchbook.com. At the time of recording, you can back Chelsea 2.32, Tottenham 3.4, the draw available at 3.6. Tottenham getting a quarter of a goal start on the main Asian handicap line at 1.94, and it's a middling goal line there at 2.5. And Miguel, again, we don't want to always get too carried away with one weekend of action. Obviously, we saw Spurs, pretty dominant against Southampton. But Southampton, if they're going to lose, they lose by a few. But geez, Chelsea were kind of underwhelming, weren't they? It was hard to really get excited about that performance in Liverpool last weekend.
Yeah, it felt, from the weekend, really. And again, I don't think this is just reading from the weekend. This really comes from the summer. And also, I would say, the last few months of last season, where it's not quite two clubs going in opposite directions. But clearly, Spurs are going one way under Antonio Conte. It's very ominous there and very impressive. Whereas Chelsea just has to feel they're flatlining at the moment. That was very much the kind of air of the game against Everton, where it was just such a turgid, kind of tepid display. I did notice there's been a clip that's been doing the rounds on social media of where Sterling made a run, and it would have been the run that I just been saying that De Bruyne would have put him through. But rather than do that, Jorginho played a sideways pass. Now, there is some murmurs today that actually Chelsea are close to an agreement with Barcelona over De Jong. Whether that changes some of the dynamic of their play, we'll see. But it just feeds into... They do feel quite a methodical team, whereas at Spurs right now, there's this whole energy about them. Now, I suppose the one thing you would say here, that the history of this fixture is basically, the modern history of this fixture, should I say, anytime Spurs think of getting ahead of themselves, Chelsea put them right in their place. And a classic example of that actually was Conte's last one of his last games in this fixture for the other side, which was Chelsea. I vividly remember at the start of the 2017-18 season, I've been at the two games. Chelsea had lost their opening match to Burnley. Spurs went in after that amazing season, the last one at the old White Hart Lane. All the talk was of a potential title challenge, Pochettino bringing the team up. And what happened? Chelsea won 2-1 with a last-minute winner. Now, I suppose the one argument could be that's the old Chelsea. This is the new Spurs. So it does cause it disrupts that recent trend. But it does feel it's all feeding into this one. And certainly from the outside, the momentum is like it's only going one way.
What are you thinking of this one, Mark O'Hare, in terms of a bet? Where does the value lie? I've obviously seen pretty decent support there for Tottenham early in the week at Matchbook.com, but what way are you seeing this one like?
Yeah, probably with the way of the market, in all honesty. Miguel summed up pretty nicely there, so I won't go over kind of old ground here. But for me, it feels quite a significant game for Tottenham to see really how far they have come and has their mentality changed now that Conte's been in charge for quite some time, because it's no secret of their poor record at Stamford Bridge, 1 win in 37 across all competitions going back to 1990. One of those games was Conte as recently as January, and Chelsea won that game quite convincingly 2-0. They won off as 1.73 favourites that day, but as we can see of the market, the prices have shifted quite significantly now in 8 months, which shows Spurs have made progress and Chelsea probably have stood still a little bit. So if Tottenham can get over that inferiority complex, I really hope they can. We might be in for a really interesting game. Clearly, they were 5.2 back in January, 3.35 now. That's a big jump, really. So, the market is basically saying these two teams are pretty much equal. If the match was played on neutral territory, it would be a pick'em. I don't disagree with that, although I would possibly say that right now I'd give Spurs a very, very slight edge. And that's just because of what they got in forward areas compared to Chelsea, who meandered towards the end of the season, looked pretty rusty for large parts of that Everton game, and Havertz and Mount didn't create a single chance between them, and a lot of the play went through James and Chilwell, which is fine, but I thought Sterling played all right, really, as a false nine. But yeah, I mean, I looked at Chelsea, and you have to go back to October, really, for the last time they scored 3 or more goals at Stamford Bridge. So that's a 14-game sample, and that match that actually they did score three goals in was against Leeds, 2 of which were penalties. So in terms of forward options, they do have plenty, but I still give Spurs a slight edge there. So, this is a Spurs team that have held Liverpool away, beat Man City away. So, they're more than capable under Conte of going to these big teams and getting results. And I just think with that quarter goal start, obviously if the game ends all square, we still make a half stakes profit. So the only way in which we lose our stake is if Chelsea wins. So I quite like Spurs having a quarter goal starter at 1.94. I do give them a slight edge in the market.
Yeah, Adrian, I think you're in agreement there. Things are good in North London right now. Arsenal in fine form, and Tottenham definitely the pick of the bunch.
Yeah, looking good. Yeah, you got to say. It was excellent against Southampton, wasn't it? It was a really, they could have had 7 or 8. Kulusevski looks fantastic, doesn't he? Looks a wonderful fit. That cross for Sessegnon was just out of this world, really. And yeah, they look really fluent, much more dangerous than Chelsea do up front. So I'd echo what the guys have just said, really. You look at Spurs forward line, compare it with Chelsea, you think there's more goals in Tottenham. If the history didn't come into it, I think Spurs would start this match as favourites. But history often plays its part, doesn't it? And Spurs have had that slight complex in recent years. I mean, all I say is I think since March, when they last lost, Spurs, no one's got more wins than Spurs. I think they've got the second highest number of goals, and they've conceded the fewest number of goals in the Premier League. So this isn't just in the here and now thing. For the last 5 months, really, Tottenham Hotspur have been in outstanding form. So yeah, I give them a great chance. I wouldn't go as far as backing them on the nose, but I like Mark's play here. Plus a quarter of goal would be my way into.
Yeah, I think it's the consensus all around. So Tottenham plus a quarter of a goal. That'll appear on site at matchbook.com plus 0.0/0.5, and that's currently available to back at 1.94. And it was interesting what Miguel said regards Frankie de Jong. I reckon if that's going to come off, that's going to be about the 17th lever that's going to be pulled at the new this time. Todd Bowley is helping them out with it. It's great to see. What a club. Great to see. Beautiful stuff. All right, we move on. Staying in West London, Brentford against Manchester United. Mark, I'll start here with you for this one. 4.0, you can back the bees here. Manchester United 2.06, 3.7, you can back the draw. Brentford getting a half a goal start on the main Asian handicap line at 1.89. 2.5 is the total at 1.84. Mark, you rightly opposed United last weekend. Is it a wash, rinse, and repeat situation this week?
It is only just really, basically all down to price, but just really interested. I think, like all of us probably were, to see what had changed at Man United through the summer with Ten Hag in charge, and just came away desperately disappointed. Everyone knows he needs time and he needs patience, and that can't be forgotten. But United are in such an awful place that there was just nothing to get excited about, nothing to sort of be optimistic about. It was just a really alarming performance on match day 1, but just echoed to everything we've seen in the past year or 2 or 3 years even, really. And, they were booed off at half-time and full-time. And we spoke last week about playing a smart team in Brighton. And, they are smart, they are savvy, they know what they're doing, they know where they're going, and they know how to get there. And those pathways just don't exist at Manchester United right now. And I think it's been epitomised by the transfer speculation, which has come out this week about who United are trying to sign. And you kind of go back and kind of repeat old ground, and everyone else has done it already, but I will too. But just criminal to start the season with that same midfield still, and without a top-class replacement or replacements. And, they've been chasing De Jong all summer. Clearly, he's not that interested in coming. So, change your targets. And surely there's someone higher up at United with an idea about what to do and sort of how to go about it. It just doesn't seem to be that way at the moment. So the worry is now, I guess, from a United perspective, is they're coming up against a team in a similar sort of mould to Brighton. Very smart operators, a very well coached club in Brentford. United did win here 3-1 last season, but this does feel like a bit of a tricky assignment for Ten Hag early on in his career. I've no desire really to back them at evens or anywhere close to evens, and that's why I've had to go for Brentford plus a half. Really, United won 6 away games last season in the Premier League, only kept 3 clean sheets away from home. Brentford last season, as a newly promoted club, went 1-2, drawn 2, lost 3 when hosting the top 7. Gave City and Chelsea really tough workouts. Liverpool dropped points here. Spurs, Arsenal, West Ham were beaten. So they're a team that's capable of rising to the occasion. I like the summer business that Brentford have done. Pretty understated, but good enough for what they require, really. Obviously, I think they were dominated, you could probably say, for a good hour against Leicester, but were given an opportunity, took it, and then really sort of had a bit of a rousing last half hour and deserved their point. Could have easily won the game at Leicester as well towards the end. And the only thing I mentioned as well, which I didn't actually say in the Spurs-Chelsea game, is it's just the weather conditions in London this weekend, or across the country, but particularly in London. It's going to be absolutely scorching, sort of mid-30s, possibly high 30s, and that's bound to affect the flow of the game, I'd say, as well, with probable drinks breaks in too. So I think that can only probably help Brentford achieve what they're looking for, which is probably going to be a point or better. So happy to back them plus half a goal at 1.89.
Before I get Adrian, your take on this, Miguel, what you make of this Rabiot talk? And I was kind of thinking about it during the week. If this guy couldn't be tolerated at a club like PSG, what hope has he got going to a Manchester United club with a new management? This does not seem like a good culture fit. You're on mute, Miguel.
I can tell you there's a lot of people who've worked with Rabiot in football that don't have very kind things to say about him or his entourage. It does just strike.
Is it Veronique or Monique or the mother you're referring to? Yeah.
I mean, she's earned quite a bit of fame for herself as well. Yes. I mean, the one thing to be generous, I suppose, she's very much looking after her son's interests. But sometimes the extent of that can have how to put it, an aggravating effect. It does. I mean, whatever about Rabiot's qualities as a player, it does strike. It kind of reflects a desperation for Manchester United, and even if this is, I mean, they do need better quality. That's obvious. They need, as Mark reflected there, just the fact they've gone into this season with the same midfield is such a poor reflection of where they are. Yeah. But even they didn't. I mean, because it's not just about getting the bodies in; it's also about kind of the nature of it. Because because this feeds into the idea that there's panic at the club, and I think that has a direct, tangible effect on the pitch. Because for me, the biggest thing about Sunday, I mean, it's possible had that game gone, or just had the game stayed in kind of neutral conditions, Ten Hag's approach might have worked. But for me, what was so big about it was, and to be fair, Ten Hag referenced this after the game, was as soon as they had a setback, no matter what they'd work on all of last season's, or really all of the issues the last few years, kind of imploded in United. And you could see it was getting to the players. And it was as if kind of Brighton recognised that right from the start. Because what was the first thing they did? Launched a high ball towards Lisandro Martinez and used that as a kind of trigger to press the rest of the United defence, setting a tone for the game. Brentford will do similar. I suppose a differential is Brentford, just by the very nature and by the resources, they don't have as much quality as Brighton, which maybe leaves it even if similar happens, it might create even more of an open game, which is why my bet has been for both teams to score, just because I don't think you can have any faith in Manchester United keeping anyone out at the moment. But I must say, I do think there'll be a bit of there will be at least some response. There needs to be, because this is. I mean, if we're referring to the psychology, this is now a test of the mettle of the players.
Adrian, Welbeck. Well, we're probably not going to say you had a field day last weekend, but you've got to expect that Ivan Toney's going to cause that centre-back partnership at United a few problems as well on Saturday, right?
Definitely, yeah. I've written a piece about it for the Premier League about Ivan Toney and his possible impact on this game. He scored a scrappy goal in that 3-1 defeat in this fixture last season. But yeah, just the nature of his muscular style, I think, has potential to upset Manchester United. If Brentford can get enough balls, if quality balls into the box, I think Ivan Toney can give Lisandro Martinez, Harry Maguire, whoever plays, real problems. Outside's outside of the big six clubs, no striker, I don't, has a better sort of goal scoring record or in terms of firing shots away and scoring goals than Tony per minute. So he's a very good player, and it'll be a handful at the weekend. Brentford didn't give Leicester much. Think about it. I know they fought back, and the story was Thomas Frank used his substitutes well, which he did. But you look at the Leicester goals. One's a 25-yarder into the top corner. The other one's a corner. In general play, they didn't offer Leicester City that much apart from a few long shots. So that's a pretty solid start from them. And Manchester United will have to improve to cause some problems, I think, in the game. There could be a reaction here, so be careful. I wouldn't be putting too much on this particular fixture. It's a tricky one to call. Ten Hag really might put the rocket up them and they'll come out flying. But based on what we've seen so far, and that reaction to a setback, which was terrible for Manchester United, then you can't back them here. I think the only one that really stands out to me is the bet that Mark suggested, Brentford on the handicap plus a half. So you've got the draw, you've got the Brentford win on side.
Yeah.
And that's the way I see it. I mean, Ronaldo surely has to come in up front, doesn't he? Here, you can't see that Eriksen as a false nine again. So we'll see. I think it'll be a different United, a better United, but Brentford can absolutely make this competitive, and I think they will.
Yeah, another well-coached team, of course, after Brighton last week. So, 2 votes for Brentford plus a half a goal, which obviously keeps the draw on side, and you get paid full stakes winners of 1.89. And Miguel's price, I see a lot of comments in the chat thinking people thinking it's going to be an open game. Both teams to score is obviously at 1.72, and you can back over 2.5 goals as well. Not a bad shout as well there. All right, we move on to the next game. We got Arsenal against Leicester. And as it is an Arsenal game, Mr. Clark, I will start with you for this one. 1.51, that's short. It's a sign of the
Very
time.
short, isn't it?
Very short. Leicester 7.4, the draw available of 4.8. Leicester getting goal start 2.12, and 2 3/4 is the total, and slightly shade towards the over. And if Arsenal keep a clean sheet here, it'll be the first time in a while they've kept back-to-back clean sheets. Then we discussed the pre-recording. William Saliba, he looks like a new signing for Arsenal, and the vibes are good right now in North London, Adrian.
Very good, yeah. I mean, the punters are obviously liking what they see as well. If we see that price on Arsenal at home to Leicester. Yeah. No, it was a good start. It was a tough challenge, wasn't it? Palace away is awkward. It wasn't a perfect performance. I think Palace came back into it and caused a few problems in the wide areas. But yeah, Saliba was the standout, wasn't he? I thought he was excellent. Gabriel Jesus looked really sharp early on. And yeah, it helped create a big chance in the second half as well. Yeah, it went to plan. I fancy Arsenal here because there'll be a very good atmosphere. I think the fans will be really on side. Could be quite intimidating for Leicester City, who don't have a very good record at all away to Arsenal. I think they've won one of their last 25 away to Arsenal in the Premier League. Really poor record. They don't keep clean sheets on their travels. 1 clean sheet in their last 26 road trips in the top flight. So based on that, you would expect Arsenal to be scoring here. And yeah, you look at how solid they were against Palace, and you think, well, surely they can get the job done here. Set pieces are interesting. Arsenal score from one very good one, I thought, against Palace. A really well worked, well thought out corner kick to sort of exploit the space. And Leicester are one of the worst teams. We know that at defending corners. They have been for a few years. So yeah, unless they've improved dramatically in that regard, Arsenal will fancy them. So I think they got set piece goals against Leicester home and away last year, the Gunners. So yeah, lots of positives for the home team here. Leicester, you've got to respect Vardy, you've got to respect Maddison. These are 2 very good players. Vardy, great record against Arsenal. Maddison, wonderful form really at the back end of last season. But I think Arsenal have got enough here. So yeah, the way I was looking at it to try and get them at a backable price was Arsenal to win and under 4.5 goals. Now, the reason I've gone for unders is that there haven't been very many high-scoring matches at Emirates in recent times. Last season, 1 of 19 matches went over 4.5 goals. So Arsenal and under 4.5 is the pick for me.
Miguel, what are you making of this one? Pro Arsenal here, but just approaching it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, I mean, I've very little confidence in Leicester in general this season. Also, I think they're increasingly. I mean, when Rodgers first got to Leicester, there was a little bit of a sense that, and it just came across in some of the kind of the XG numbers and the analytics, that while the structure of the team was very good, it didn't actually translate into creating many chances. But Vardy just solved that, being the sort of player that Vardy was. And now, given Vardy's getting on in years, given that there are so much eruptions within this Leicester team, we could yet have some major outgoings. And we're seeing maybe a little bit of because the goals they got at the weekend, one was a set piece, the other was basically it was a brilliant goal, but it was a long-range effort. It's not exactly reflective of Leicester's general play. And given how solid Arsenal have been, I'm just thinking now, nearly thinking a decent bet for that game would have been for Arsenal to not concede a clean sheet. And yeah, just because of that solidity, because of the momentum around both teams, and because of the opening weekend, I would agree with the guys. It's very confident for Arsenal.
Mark, what are you making of this one? Give Leicester a bit of a chance to trouble the Arsenal rear guard, or what were you thinking?
I give them a chance to trouble Arsenal for sure. But my original bet I wrote down was Arsenal to win and over 1.5 goals at 1.8. But I've changed it for something slightly bigger, which I'll get to it in a sec. But I've talked about this for probably a year or so now. But Arsenal at Emirates, when odds-on favourites, are super strong and super consistent. I went back over the last 8 seasons when Arsenal have been priced up at odds-on at the Emirates. They've got a 75% win rate, which is excellent, really. And they did beat Leicester quite comfortably, I think, twice last season, including here at the Emirates in March. But that last meeting, probably I wouldn't read too much into that, because that was sandwiched between Leicester's 2 Europa Conference legs, so they probably had their eyes elsewhere. But from a Leicester perspective, what's changed? Well, not a lot, really, based on how they performed against Brentford. Similar sort of errors. And I was probably a little bit surprised to see Fofana play, despite the speculation. I wouldn't be too surprised if he's gone in the next fortnight or so, by the sounds of it. And then you've lost Ricardo Pereira as well to injury. So defensively, there's still going to be those doubts persisting around them, but they always carry that threat going forward because they've got the individual quality to do so. But I looked at the prices here. We've got over 2 3/4 is the goal line at 1.88. The goal expectancy of this game is 2.95. So the market is effectively saying there's going to be 3 goals here or more, which is fair enough, really. Overs is 1.71, but both teams to score is 1.87. And now I know Arsenal have been giving a -1 Asian handicap start here. So you're expecting Arsenal to score at least twice, but are they going to cover that line all on their own? Are they going to score 3 goals without reply? Possibly. They're more than capable of doing so, but I think it's quite a tall order, really. And I think perhaps undervalues Leicester's own attack, seeing both teams to score at 1.87 when overs is at 1.71. This is a Leicester team that scored in all but 6 Premier League games last season. Away from home, they failed to score twice. Once was that game at the Emirates when they were involved in European action before and after, and the other was at Anfield. So they scored in their other 17 away days. Both teams to score banked in 16 of those 17. Adrian mentioned their defensive record away from home. That 1 clean sheet in 26 came at relegated Burnley. It's the same coach, it's the same players, so I don't know why we're expecting anything different, really. So, yeah, it started by Arsenal and over 1.5 goals, but I've actually kind of shifted towards both teams to score. But again, just mindful of the weather here, baking hot conditions, probably a slower pace, and that means fewer goals. So something to bear in mind.
Miguel, just as a point of reference, Arsenal to win with a clean sheet is 2.7. So that might be one to kind of keep an eye on. Adrian, because I know that this is a game that you actually very much like in the latter stages of the show, I'm going to side with you. They're very similar opinions, but Arsenal and under 4.5. And I've already basically tipped my hat to what his best bet is, of course. But hey, what are you going to do? That's a 1.92. But pro Gunners along the way here anyway. All right, this is a game that I'll be honest, is the early kickoff on Saturday, Aston Villa against Everton. I don't know, I could be at the beach, I could be doing something else. I'm not totally sure if it's something I want to get involved in. But if I have a bet I could make, just keep an eye on it.
Two bad teams, Sully.
Yes, that's exactly. Yeah, that was my
Two bad managers, maybe the big one.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Stephen Gerrard now has found himself in the Frank Lampard category. 2 wins in his last 12 Premier League outings. You can back Villa here at 1.87. The best of luck to you if you are. 5.0 is 4-1. You can back Everton. The draw available 3.75. Everton getting a half a goal start, which keeps the draw inside at 2.12, and 2.5 is the total, shaded towards the under 1.84. Miguel, Villa last weekend, you fancied him to do a job against Bournemouth. So disappointing. I hate to bring that back up, but things aren't great there right now, right?
I would say my prediction was more a reflection of, well, maybe I thought Villa would settle a bit after the summer and the signings they've made, and really it was all about Bournemouth, given so much we'd heard about their summer, which is why it was such a massive. I would actually say it's the biggest shock of the weekend, to be honest. But there's an argument that it was a great reflection of where Villa are and where Bournemouth are, which is why it really sets up. I mean, maybe the game doesn't immediately jump out at the moment, given where the two teams are. But it's actually, I think it's a game that could potentially set up the season for both, in the sense that if someone loses here, pressure is massively on. And of course, there's that other narrative strand to it, given it's Lampard against Gerrard, something that's been discussed a lot. Only one can. Maybe neither can be there in this case, but because both. The pressure could really escalate here. They've both got real problems. I mean, with Villa, the undercurrent now is that. But I mean, there's already been questions about Lampard's ability as a coach. With Gerrard now, despite the positive noises over his previous work at Rangers, now the undercurrent is that it was Beale that did most of the actual coaching, and that it's kind of left Gerrard without half of his impact as a manager. Now, only time will tell if that's actually true. But at the moment, the signs are not good, and I must say, as much as anything, I find this game very difficult to predict, because both teams, in so many senses, are such unknowns. Even from the fact that we touched on this last week, and I think it fed into some of the nature of Chelsea's performance on Saturday as well. But it does generally suit Lampard, despite, I mean, he's previously spoken about how he wants to kind of be an open manager with aggressive teams. But actually, most of his best performances have come when his teams have been able to play counter-attacking football. Now, the fact they're away from home, that might feed into that, but we don't really know what they're going to offer. And it's why I've gone for a draw here, really. A draw that's actually probably unsatisfactory to both, but it would be more unsatisfactory to Villa.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad show if you can't pick Bournemouth or shite. So let's just pick the draw. I like it. Mark, your angle, both teams to score no. I actually was kind of intrigued by this one, because this does strike me as a 1-0 or a 2-0 game if a team can get some level of success there.
Yeah, well, I think the draw is a big runner as well, and it was certainly under consideration. Gerrard said himself that Villa were miles off it against Bournemouth, largely dominated the ball, 66% of possession, but 15 shots, just 2 on target, and an XG of around 0.66. Just really underwhelming stuff that kind of eats into the back end of last season, as we've already sort of discussed, and also a bit of a malaise in their home performances at Villa Park, which was 2 wins from 10 this calendar year. So, for large parts of his tenure, particularly since January's additions, it's not looked like he's had the system or known what system he wants to play with the best 11. And I was kind of excited to see what he did on the first weekend of the season. And I still think there's still a question mark over what he's trying to do with the players he's got, and particularly his game-changing players. And Buendia was benched again last week, and there's still stuff kind of lingering with Tyrone Mings. I think he's created sort of unnecessary headlines for himself there. It's being sort of reported there's no actual issue between the two, but just unnecessary stuff, really. It's not required. And Miguel's already talked about the influence of Mick Beale too. So that's Villa. And then you've got Everton, who've probably were more competitive against Chelsea than most imagined they would be. Lampard was quite frustrated with the result because of the penalty being the difference. I thought they did okay, considering they had Anthony Gordon, Damari Gray, and Dwight McNeil basically as their forwards, and didn't create a huge amount. But this week they got Rondon back from suspension. Admittedly, not the biggest coup, but Coleman, I think, is due back as well. And you've got Connor Cody and Onana signing as well. So they will be bolstered in certain respects. I know they've lost Ben Godfrey and Yerry Mina, but their 11 could look a little bit different. So But again, you just got to question the brains trust at Goodison to allow someone like Ellis Sims to go out on loan when you've literally got no other strikers available last weekend. Very, very bizarre. But so yeah, Everton have got issues in both boxes. We know that their away record is absolutely terrible. Joint fewest points last season, won just twice on the road, lost 13 times. 2 clean sheets and failed to score on 7 occasions, but just very unwilling to pull the trigger on Aston Villa at those prices. So instead, I thought the goals route was the option here, and I thought evens for both teams to score no was fair enough. Neither side scored on match day 1. Mentioned Villa's systematic and personal concerns, their own dodgy form, Everton's away record, the injuries, the issues up front. Chuck in the early kickoff, chuck in the fact that the weather's going to be 31 degrees at kickoff in Birmingham on Saturday and only rising. Just appeals to me as an absolute stinker, but I am quite intrigued by this match. So, yeah, a draw, unders, and sort of BTTS no would be the options I was looking at, but I chose the even money option.
So neither of you gentlemen made a case for Villa, but Adrian Clark, you make the case.
Well, I find it difficult. I do find it difficult to make a case for Villa. I just don't think they can be as stupid again, really. I mean, I just thought tactically it was a very jumbled performance. There was no clear direction in what Gerrard was trying to achieve with that starting 11. And I don't know if you saw this. They swung. It was like was it Moyes' Manchester United? They swung in 25 crosses in open play, which I think was 7 or 8 more than anybody else at the weekend. Basically, they had no guile, no invention. They just resorted to getting the ball wide and slinging crosses in, but Bournemouth's 3-man defence or 5-man defence just set them up all day. It wasn't an issue. I think Villa can't be as bad again. I just got no faith in Everton. That's where I'm coming from here. I could easily go with a BTTS no. It sounds like a very low scoring game. If I had to pick a winner, I probably would go with the draw as well. But yeah, I just thought Everton are terrible on the road. I think they won twice away from home last season. They got big disruptions at the back. Obviously, you can look at it as a positive with Cody coming in, but they've lost 2 of the back 3 that they chose to start the season with. They've still got no strikers. I find it the only hope I give Everton here is set pieces, because Villa are terrible at defending them, and Everton actually quite good. And I think Tarkowski caused Chelsea a few issues from that other weekend. So yeah, maybe we'll see a set piece goal from Everton. But yeah, I think if you want to get on side with Villa, and I suspect there are not that many people that do, go under 4.5, and then you can get it at a backable price.
All right, Miguel said the draw. Mark said BTTS no. Adrian gave a slight vote of confidence to Villa. This is the ultimate no bet game, gentlemen. Just going to move on. We have 3 EFL selections. We have 3 best bets coming up. That's a no bet game for me. Let's do a very quick recap of the Premier League games we have. And again, we're rattling through a lot of these bets, and I'm conscious that people listening on the podcast won't see these on the screen. So check out Matchbook Insights. If you just Google Matchbook Insights, or it's insights.matchbook.com, you will find all these selections. They'll be up from Thursday morning as we're recording late on Wednesday afternoon. All right, let's get on to the EFL. Mark O'Hare selection from League One. Bolton plus 0.0, which is draw no bet, against Port Vale at 1.83. What is the case?
Yeah, well, Bolton are one of the teams I fancy to go really well in League One this season. It's very competitive towards the top end, but I think Ian Everts built a strong squad, moving in the right direction, showed promotion contending form from mid-January last season, and they looked to me a little bit underrated for this trip to Vale. Started the season superbly, really, despite quite a difficult schedule, held Ipswich away, played fantastically well for the first 45 minutes before Ipswich came back in after the half-time, and then convincingly beat Wycombe last weekend, and that was much more of a 90-minute display. They accumulated over 2 expected goals, had 15 shots in the box, and then midweek in the League Cup just battered Salford as well. Not that it matters too much, but scored 5 goals there. So they're going very, very hot at the minute. And they're up against a Port Vale team who obviously won promotion last season, started with a 2-1 win against Fleetwood at home, both goals coming from centre-backs. But then they were well beaten 4-0 at Exeter, managed only 4 shots on target across the 2 games, and an accumulative XG of 0.86 as well, which is quite concerning, really. I expect reasonable things from Exeter this season, all right, but at the start of the season, both Fleetwood and Exeter were both firmly in the sort of bottom half according to the market, and that's fair enough, really. And this is a definite step up in class, really. So I think it's worth noting as well, considering I keep talking about the conditions at the weekend, but Port Vale play Rotherham on Wednesday night in the League Cup, so they get 24 hours less time for sort of turnaround time compared to Bolton. I think that could possibly make a difference in the heat if they don't make widespread changes on Wednesday night. And last season, Bolton lost just 5 games of 30 when playing teams outside of the top 8. So, they're normally pretty handy when it comes to the lesser lights.
I'm glad you're making reference to it. I like it. Adrian, Cheltenham fresh from a 7-0 loss against Exeter. So we're not backing them, but you are backing Portsmouth to beat them at 2.23. Maybe not 7-0, but you fancy them anyhow.
I think the price is good. If we start with Cheltenham, apart from that 7-0 thrashing, which isn't ideal, is it, in the League Cup, even if you make a few changes, no one wants to get spanked 7-0 in front of your own supporters. They lost 1-0 at Barnsley. They lost 3-2 at home to Peterborough. Having started the game well, they threw it away, had a bit of a collapse in front of their own supporters. Not a good start for the new manager, Wade Elliott. It's a new team, a new gaffer there, new era, and certainly not the start he's looking for. And Pompey are strong. I look at their attacking options. They've got Colby Bishop, who they brought in. He's very good at that level. They've got Dane Scarlett on loan from Spurs, highly rated young player. Joe Pigott, Ronan Curtis. Lots of goal threats, I think. And we've seen that on the road. They drew 3-3 at Sheffield Wednesday on the opening day. That's a very good result. They went and won in the League Cup 3-0 at Cardiff. So, 2 road trips, 6 goals. And at home, they were held quite unluckily to Lincoln, who they didn't give a sniff to, really. So I think it's been a good start for the Cowleys and Pompey this season. And I think they can go to Cheltenham and roll them over. And I just think, I think the price is quite appealing.
League 2, Adrian, Tranmere against Gillingham. Both teams to score 1.8. Who's the better defensive side?
Well, I mean, if this was last season, I'd have backed this result as well. These are two of the sort of most boring, low-scoring teams in the EFL. Mark will know this with all his supercomputer algorithms and whatnot. These two will pop up on the unders every single time, I think.
Don't forget about the weather too. It's going to be very warm there in Tranmere.
I think Mark's mentioned that. Yeah, I think Mark mentioned that earlier, didn't he? Neil Harris is a defensive coach for Gillingham, first and foremost. He keeps things tight. BTTS Noah's landed in all 3 of Gillingham's games so far. 2 of them they've got clean sheets in, so they're defensively quite good at the moment. Prenton Park was very, very low scoring last season. Not that many changes in personnel for Mickey Mellon over the summer. So why should there be a big change? There was a lot of low scoring matches at Tranmere this time last year. They've not had a great start, and I think they'll be eager not to lose this game, Tranmere. So even though they're at home, I think the handbrake will be on a little bit because they won't want to pick up another defeat. So I think this is 0-0 or 1-0 either way, maybe 2-0 max. So that's where I'm going. Tranmere Gills, BTTS no.
Just in relation, actually, I'm curious about Mark. Have you got actually a database in terms of kind of degrees Celsius to goals or conditions?
No, unfortunately not. It's just a kind of rule of thumb that I've kind of learned through the years. More Stoke going through.
That you don't. Yeah.
I mean, surely that's actually something, if you had the research, it's something that actually would be observable.
Yeah, I just I've never sort of tracked the temperature at kickoff time to sort of actually kind of have it in the database.
So, in the next couple of years, it is going to get much cooler, so there probably is no need to start these things. So no, it's in all honesty, Miguel, there's very few databases he doesn't have, but that actually is one.
That is true. Yeah.
We're on to best bets time. Miguel Delaney, you opposed Bournemouth last weekend. It's a trickier test this week, just slightly. They go to Manchester to take on Erling Haaland and co. Manchester City to win, and they're to be over 3.5 goals. His odds against 2.05. This has surely got to be come back down to reality moment for Scott Parker's side, right?
I mean, Mark mentioned earlier about how Fulham Liverpool last week was as close to a bang you can get. I mean, this goes beyond that, and not just I mean, it just feels like even the way kind of Bournemouth set up. All right, it's not the classic Eddie Howe Bournemouth when they try and play the ball. And Pep Guardiola will patronise them after the game, playing the right way as he thumped them 5-0. But it still just feels, especially once City get one in this game, which you would feel could happen. Or this could be a classic. I mean, City do have, of all teams, all big teams in Premier League history, they've got a record for those +5 goal wins, and it could even be one where it's kind of a hat trick or more for Haaland. It feels very ominous for Bournemouth. Now, again, they shocked us last week. Maybe they'll get some momentum from that, but surely.
Yeah. And look, I think you mentioned it to me earlier too, over 4.5 is close to 3-1, so putting anyone off that. And I think a matchbook too, you can back any other score. So we do it up to like 3-0. So if you wanted to back a 4-0, a 5-0, a 6-0, a 7-1, you can get that at a pretty decent price. You've got all those bands of scores with you. So yeah, Adrian, do you want to come in on something there?
So I was just gonna ask you if Matchbook had got a price on Scott Parker wearing that shocking striped jacket at the weekend in this 35-degree heat. Surely not. It must be long odds on that.
I would imagine so. I'll ask around and see what we can get. Mark O'Hare, hope you're wearing it this weekend. The worst thing was some people have said, he's downplayed Bournemouth's off season. I don't think he did. I think last weekend surprised him as much as it surprised everyone else. I think he's an honest enough Joe. Mark, go to League Two. A bit of a different kind of team here. Carlisle +1/4 versus Swindon at 1.82. I'll put my hands up, Mark. I don't know enough about this to even preface in any way, but you'll tell me why Carlisle are the bet here.
Well, they were heading for a big battle with relegation last season before their sort of hero came back, Paul Simpson, and saved them with fantastic form to end the season. He's now taken charge of 17 games since he's returned to Brunton Park. They've won 9 of those on home soil. They've won 6 from 8 under Simpson. In his second spell, go back to match day 1 when they took on Crawley, who people were expecting big things of this season after some of the investment they've had. And the scoreline was only 1-0 to Cardiff, but it was absolutely one-way traffic. 23 shots, almost 2.5 expected goals registered, 15 shots in the box. They went to Colchester last weekend, only drew 1-1, but they won the shot count again and spurned 3 very good opportunities. And they've been relatively solid from a defensive perspective, despite losing a few key players. I know they've just signed Huntington today, which is a really solid signing, which will improve them as well. They're now hosting Swindon this weekend, which, as we all know, is a very long journey up to Carlisle. I mentioned the heat again, but I wouldn't want to be on those coaches for that long trip. But yeah, beginning life without Ben Garner as well, Swindon, who left in the summer. Lost 3 key players who followed him to Charlton as well. Scott Lindsay, the former assistant, has stepped up, and early efforts haven't been too convincing, in all honesty. They lost 3-0 at Harrogate on match day 1, gave away 11 shots in the box. Take out the penalty that Swindon missed, and they didn't create much at all. And then last weekend they held Salford at home, which actually was quite a decent result considering because Harry McCurdy was sent off just before half time. It was a backs against the wall job, but again, just failed to really threaten the opposition penalty area. And that's a concern. They do get McCurdy back from suspension. It's worth noting too that Swindon were the best team away from home last season in League Two by some distance, but the opening show against Harrogate, plus the departures of the head coach and 3 key players to Charlton, suggests they probably won't be the same team around this time. I've certainly got them sort of mid-table, possibly pushing down to the bottom half on my ratings pre-season. So I think the match is being priced up as if this game was taking place last season, Carlisle battling relegation and Swindon in the playoffs, where I think actually these 2 teams have got much, much closer together, and therefore the prices are wrong. And therefore, if this match was taking place 6 to 8 weeks' time, we see very different prices here. So to be able to get Carlisle plus a quarter, earning us some winnings even if they draw, that really appeals. They're outsiders at home, which doesn't sit right with me at all.
All right, Adrian Clark, it's very rare that you put Arsenal up as your best bet, but you're doing it here, Arsenal to beat Leicester in under 4.5 goals.
I don't like to do it. I don't want to jinx things, but looking around the EFL, it's still a minefield. We're still early days. You've touched on it earlier. We're discovering new patterns this season. A lot of the sides are different, so you sort of got to tiptoe through these, I think. And when I look at the Premier League slate, I look through all the games. The one that I fancy strongest is Arsenal to beat Leicester. at home this weekend and for it not to be a high-scoring game. You know, the conditions, Leicester's away record, Arsenal's form, Saliba coming into the back four. It all adds up to Arsenal being quite solid and doing enough, I think, to get a second successive victory. So, yeah, and as I said, 1 in 19 matches at Emirates last season went over 4.5 goals. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that element of history and go with Arsenal and under 4.5.
All right, good stuff. We haven't got it up on the site, but we'll probably do a podcast treble, which you'll be able to find on our podcast specials. We'll combine those three. We'll hopefully have better success than last weekend. I would imagine it's about 6.0, just working out the rough odds. Again, as we said last season, if you see that price back or a better price elsewhere, drop us a DM on Twitter at Team Matchbook, and we'll boost that up further. All right, my thanks to Adrian, Mark, Miguel. Pleasure as ever, guys. Week 2 in the books. If you're enjoying the content, you're watching us on YouTube now, give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, or if you're listening to us on the podcast, please leave us a preferential review. It does help and it makes us very happy. Puts a smile on our face and puts a smile on the face of the boss. Is always a good thing as well. Until next Thursday, we'll probably do Thursday next week. Until then, best of luck with your best this weekend and goodbye for now.